Today we'll be looking at bankruptcy filing trends by chapter in the state of Indiana. To do this, we have about a dozen charts showing bankruptcy activity in the state going back to 1990. All of the filing data comes from the Administrative Office of the United States Courts. This first chart shows total filings by year since 1990. And you can see that during this period, there have been nearly a million cases, about 975,000 cases filed in the state. In the early 1990s, the volume was around 25,000 per year. This jumped up by the late 1990s to close to 40,000 per year. In the early 2000s, filings were generally over 50,000 per year. There's a huge spike in 2005, got up to nearly 80,000. Big drop off in 2006. Increases through 2009, most recent peak. But filings even then didn't get back to where they had been prior to bankruptcy reform. And then filings have dropped off by more than 40% since from 2009 through 2015. So right now, filings are about where they were in the early 1990s in the state, and about half of where they were prior to bankruptcy reform in 2005. This next chart shows the states are colored by their filings relative to population. Red is the most, yellow is the least, and most states in the Northeast have very light bankruptcy rates. The perennial lowest is Alaska. The highest are generally in the Southeast, and Tennessee is the leader nearly every year. But Indiana is also quite high, and actually they've been over this period of time from 1990 to 2015, they've been 46% above average, which is fifth highest. Only Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, and Utah have had higher rates. Now, looking at this year by year, you can see that throughout the 1990s, the gap between Indiana and the national was about 25%. It rose in the early 2000s, really peaked in 2005, and actually during 2005, because of bankruptcy reform, and there was a particularly high surge in filings in Indiana. The state had the highest bankruptcy rate relative to population of any state ever, and the bankruptcy rate that year was about 20% above the birth rate in the state, just to put in perspective. And then since 2006, Indiana's been about 58% above the national average. So Indiana is, basically has quite a high bankruptcy rate. Looking at Chapter 7 filings by year, in the early 90s, around 20,000 per year, up to about 30,000 in the late 1990s, up to nearly 40, or over 40,000 actually, early 2000s. Big spike in 2006, about an 80% decline the next year. Jumped back up through 2009, but didn't really get up to where they had been prior to bankruptcy reform. And then down by nearly one half since then. So right now, Chapter 7s in the state are about where they were, say, in 1994 in Indiana. Chapter 11 filings in the state, you can see that there was a huge decline through the 1990s, from 92 to 2000, 9 straight declines. And this happened in nearly every state. And since then, filings have been about 100 per year in the state, but a little bit higher during and after recessions. Now, Chapter 13 filings, we're kind of have an interesting pattern where you had 11 straight increases through the mid-90s up to 2005, where Chapter 13's quadrupled in the state. A drop-off in 2006, came back up nearly to record highs by 2009 as the recession was really taking hold, and then it dropped down by 35-40% since then. So right now, Chapter 13 filings in the state are about the same as where they were, say, in the year 2000, but 2 or 3 times as high as where they were back in the early 1990s. and which is a larger increase. Most states are much closer to where they were in 1990. Looking at the percent of cases filed as Chapter 13, the red line shows the national average, and it's been right around 30% for most years going back to 1990, with some disruption before and after bankruptcy reform. In Indiana, the rate was only around 10% in 1990, and it's basically risen gradually over time. So it's followed the same national trends, but has been moving closer and closer to the national average. And right now, it's jumped up to about 30% of the cases in the state are filed as Chapter 13s. This next chart shows the unemployment rate in Indiana by quarter. Gives an idea of kind of a proxy of how the economy has gone over the years. And Indiana has really followed the national average very closely, the blue line here. A little bit higher during the recession, but things have come back down right now. So both national and Indiana are at about 5% unemployment rate. Now, bankruptcies filed, total bankruptcies nationwide peaked in September 2010. That's the most recent peak, anyways. And since then, they've been down very substantially, by 49% nationwide, and very close to that in Indiana, too, 48%. Looking at it quarter by quarter, it seemed that Indiana had a larger than average decline in 2011, kind of smaller than average declines in 2012 and 13s, and then they've been about average 2014 through 2016. Now, trying to figure out where things might go right now, in the first 6 months of the year, filings were down by more than 10% in Indiana, so they continue to drop there, where the rate of decline is slowing nationwide. It's under 6%. For the third quarter, Indiana was down 5 or 6%. And so I think what this means, where things are going, is that there'll be 25,000 cases filed in the state this year. 11s will be well below 100 this year, maybe only 60 or 70 a year. I think there'll be probably slight increases in bankruptcies in the state in the coming years, but I don't see any return to the 50,000 or more cases filed per year that Indiana saw from, say, 2002 to 2005. Well, that concludes our look at bankruptcy filings in Indiana. For more statistical information and other information on bankruptcy, be sure to visit the newsroom section on the ABI website at www.abi.org.